Final update. HOA tried to ban my guests after 8 p.m., didn't know they're all federal agents. The final blow didn't come from a courtroom, a government office, or a dramatic arrest. It came quietly during a neighborhood barbecue I hosted 2 weeks after the audit team wrapped up their investigation. The weather was perfect, the food was great, and for once, everyone in the neighborhood looked relaxed. Laughter replaced whispers, and for the first time since I moved in, people weren't watching their words in fear of being reported. It felt like the neighborhood had finally started healing, shedding the shadow Karen had cast over it for years. And while the music played and the kids played tag on the grass, something poetic happened. A patrol car rolled up slowly to the curb, and out stepped 2 plainclothes investigators. They weren't there for me. They walked right past the party and down the street, disappearing toward Karen's house without fanfare or raised voices. A few minutes later, she emerged, flanked by the 2 officers, face pale and posture stiff. No cuffs, no shouting, just quiet questioning and a politely delivered court summons. But everyone saw, and that silence at the party spoke louder than any fireworks could have. That barbecue wasn't just a gathering, it was the punctuation mark at the end of a chapter. People had started talking openly. Several neighbors came up to me that day to thank me, not because I had won some personal war with Karen, but because I had shown them it was possible to stand up to her. One couple admitted they had been fined over $4,000 across the last 2 years for vague offenses like improper mulch shade and suspicious overnight illumination they'd been too scared to appeal. Another elderly resident told me Karen had threatened to report his daughter's car for suspicious activity because she visited late at night to help him with medication. These weren't HOA rules being enforced, they were control tactics. And now that grip was gone. Karen's court appearance wasn't publicized, but word got around fast. She was being charged with unauthorized surveillance, malfeasance, and obstruction tied to the HOA financial review. The wildlife cam incident had become part of a broader investigation into evidence manipulation. Turns out, she hadn't just removed the camera, she had smashed it and tossed it into a community trash compactor. Unfortunately for her, the compactor had been emptied the next morning, and its contents rerouted to the county waste facility, where a small piece of the broken casing with a serial number had been recovered. Diego called it the dumbest smoking gun he'd ever seen. To me, it was just the final confirmation that she couldn't help herself. Even when backed into a corner, she still thought she could claw her way out through petty sabotage. By the following week, the county HOA oversight panel had finished their formal recommendations. Karen was officially banned from holding any leadership role in any registered HOA for the next 10 years. The Oak Haven HOA board was temporarily disbanded and placed under third-party administration. Fines that had been issued improperly during Karen's term were now being refunded, and homeowners were encouraged to submit records for reimbursement. I received a check in the mail a few days later for every cent Karen had tried to squeeze out of me since moving in. Along with it was a brief letter apologizing for the inconvenience. I didn't care about the money, I cared about what it symbolized. For once, someone like Karen didn't just get away with it. She got caught, exposed, and finally stripped of her power. Despite everything, I never saw her try to confront me again. Not once. I think even Karen knew the difference between revenge and reality by then. She had been the queen of a paper castle, and when the wind blew just right, it all crumbled without a single stone thrown in return. But that didn't mean I forgot what she had done or how close things had come to getting truly dangerous. She had underestimated not just who I was, but who I knew, and she had treated my guests like intruders, not realizing they were the very people who enforced the laws she thought she could manipulate. That first night, when she marched across my lawn waving her laminated nonsense and barking orders, she believed she was untouchable. She believed her clipboard could outrank a federal badge. And that belief led her straight into her downfall. A week later, I hosted one last event, not a party, not a loud gathering, just a quiet dinner. I invited a few close friends, Diego, Leah, Patel, even Sheila from the former board, and a few neighbors who had shown the courage to speak out. We sat under the string lights in the backyard, surrounded by calm. The energy was different now. There was no tension, no fear of flashlights sweeping across the fence line, just peace. And as we passed food around and shared stories, Diego raised his glass and said, "To HOA overreach, may it always underestimate the federal guest list." Everyone laughed, and I knew right then that this was more than just the end of Karen's reign. It was the beginning of a new chapter for the community. People were talking about forming a new board, one focused on real issues like security lighting and road repairs, not the angle of a garden hose or the height of a holiday wreath. There was talk of rewriting the bylaws from scratch, with transparency, with fairness. I told them I didn't want to run, but I'd help them draft everything. I wanted to leave it better than I found it. As the evening wrapped up and people began saying their goodbyes, Leah lingered a moment longer. She looked around the yard and said, "This place feels different now." I nodded. It did. Not because Karen was gone, but because people had finally stopped being afraid of her. That was the real victory, not the fines, not the audit, not even the court summons. It was the way the neighbors now stood a little straighter, looked each other in the eye, and didn't lower their voices out of fear of being reported. That was the thing Karen never understood. Power isn't in the rules you write or the letters you send. It's in the people who choose whether or not to follow you. And now, no one was following her anymore. I walked Leah out to her car, then stood at the curb watching the stars. The porch light glowed softly behind me, and the night was quiet. No shadows creeping around the fence, no cameras hidden in bushes, just silence. Finally, real silence. And as I turned back toward the house, I smiled. Let Karen tell whatever story she wanted. Let her blame whoever she had to. The truth had already been written, and everyone had read it.